The massive space station Harmony 7 floated like a giant metal flower in the darkness of space. Its silver walls gleamed under the light of 3 distant suns, and ships from dozens of worlds docked at its many ports every day. This was the most famous trading station in the galaxy, known for one very special thing. No violence was allowed anywhere on the station. Hyunwoo Park pressed his face against the small window of the human transport ship as they approached the docking bay. He was a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. As Earth's new trade ambassador, this was his first time visiting Harmony 7. He had heard many stories about this place, but seeing it with his own eyes was something else entirely. "Sir, we will be docking in 5 minutes," said Ji-Hai Kim, his young assistant. She sat across from him, checking her data pad one more time. Ji-Hai was smart and always prepared. She had been studying the station's rules and customs for weeks before their trip. "Good," Hyunwoo replied, still looking out the window. "I wonder what kind of welcome we will get." The transport ship shuddered slightly as it connected to the docking clamps. Through the speakers, a calm voice announced their arrival. "Welcome to Harmony 7, the galaxy's premier center for peaceful trade and diplomacy. All passengers must proceed to Processing Bay 7 for orientation." Hyunwoo and Ji-Hai gathered their bags and followed the other passengers down the narrow corridor. The station's interior was nothing like the cramped ships they were used to. The ceilings were high and painted with soft blue light that felt almost like natural sky. Plants from many different worlds grew in large pots along the walls, filling the air with sweet and strange smells. "This way, please," said a mechanical voice from speakers hidden in the walls. Arrows of light appeared on the floor, leading them toward the processing bay. As they walked, Hyunwoo noticed other beings from across the galaxy. There were the tall, thin Altarians with their blue skin and 4 arms. A group of Centauri merchants rolled past on their wheel-like lower bodies, speaking in high-pitched musical tones. Even a few of the mysterious Voidwalkers were present, their dark robes hiding whatever was underneath. The processing bay was enormous, with dozens of lines leading to different check-in desks. Above each desk floated a sign in hundreds of languages. Ji-Hai quickly found the one marked for new diplomatic arrivals, and they joined the short line there. "Next," called a voice that sounded like wind chimes. The being behind the desk was unlike anything Hyunwoo had ever seen. It looked like a person made of living crystal, tall and angular, with light moving through its body like water. This was Administrator Veltar, the station's chief administrator. "Ambassador Park from Earth," Hyunwoo said, bowing slightly. "This is my assistant, Ji-Hai Kim." Administrator Veltar's crystal head tilted to one side, and the lights inside shifted to a warmer color. "Ah yes, the humans. We have been expecting you. I must admit, your species has quite a reputation in this part of the galaxy." "Oh, really?" Hyunwoo asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "What kind of reputation would that be?" "Well," Veltar continued, the lights in their body flickering faster, "humans are known for being rather energetic in their problem-solving methods. Some might say violent, but do not worry. Here on Harmony 7, such behavior is impossible." Ji-Hai raised an eyebrow but stayed quiet. She had read about this in her research, but hearing it directly from the administrator was different. Veltar stood up from behind the desk, their crystal body making tiny ringing sounds as they moved. "Allow me to explain our most important feature. Please follow me to the orientation chamber." They walked down another corridor, this one wider than the first. The walls here were covered with what looked like metal mesh, but Hyunwoo could feel something strange in the air. It was like a slight pressure on his mind, not unpleasant, but definitely there. "What you are feeling," Veltar explained without being asked, "is our neural dampening field. It is the most advanced peaceful technology in the galaxy. The field reads the brain patterns of every being on the station and prevents any aggressive thoughts from becoming aggressive actions." "Fascinating," Hyunwoo said. "So if someone wanted to start a fight, they simply could not," Veltar finished. "The field would suppress the impulse before it could lead to violence. We have had 0 incidents of physical conflict in over 50 years of operation." They entered a large circular room with chairs arranged in rows. A few other new arrivals were already seated, listening to a recorded presentation about the station's rules and services. Veltar gestured for Hyunwoo and Ji-hai to sit in the front row. Now then, Veltar continued, let me explain how disputes are resolved here on Harmony 7. Since violence is impossible, all conflicts must be settled through discussion, mediation, and mutual understanding. We have trained counselors available at all times, and our judicial system focuses on finding solutions that benefit everyone involved. Hyunwoo nodded along, but Ji-hai noticed a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. She had worked with him long enough to recognize that look. It usually appeared right before he did something that surprised everyone around him. This sounds like a wonderful system, Hyunwoo said. I am sure my people will adapt to your peaceful ways without any trouble at all. Excellent, Veltar replied, the lights in their bodies shifting to what might have been a pleased color. I was concerned that humans might find it difficult to adjust, given your species' history of solving problems through direct action. Oh, we humans are very good at adapting, Hyunwoo said, his smile growing slightly wider. When one method does not work, we simply find another way to achieve our goals. It is one of our best qualities, really. Veltar seemed satisfied with this answer. They handed both humans small devices that looked like silver coins. These are your station identification badges. They will translate languages, provide maps, and give you access to all public areas. Your quarters are in Section C, Level 15. The diplomatic offices are on Level 20. Thank you for your warm welcome, Ji-hai said, accepting her badge and clipping it to her jacket. We look forward to productive trade negotiations. As do we, Veltar replied. Harmony 7 exists to promote peaceful commerce between all species. I am certain your stay here will be both profitable and entirely civilized. After Veltar left, them to continue the orientation on their own, Ji-hai leaned over to whisper to Hyunwoo. Sir, you have that look again. What look? He whispered back, though his eyes were twinkling with something that might have been mischief. The look you get when someone tells you something is impossible, she said. The same look you had when the Martian Trade Council said humans could never understand their bartering system. Hyunwoo chuckled quietly. I have no idea what you are talking about, Ji-hai. I am simply looking forward to learning about this fascinating station and its innovative approach to conflict resolution. Uh-huh, Ji-hai said, but she was smiling too. She had seen what happened when humans were told they could not do something. Usually they found a way to do it anyway, just in a manner no one expected. The recorded presentation continued, explaining the station's many services and facilities. Hyunwoo listened politely, but his mind was already working. Violence was impossible here, that much was clear. The neural dampening field saw to that. But there were many ways to solve problems that had nothing to do with violence. After all, humans had been talking their way out of trouble long before they learned to fight their way out of it. And if this station prized peaceful discussion and mutual understanding above all else, well, perhaps it was time to show the galaxy just how creative humans could be with words. As they left the orientation chamber and headed toward their quarters, Hyunwoo was already looking forward to his first real conversation with the other traders on Harmony 7. Something told him it was going to be very interesting indeed. 3 days had passed since Hyunwoo and Ji-hai arrived at Harmony 7. The station was everything Administrator Veltar had promised and more. The corridors were clean and bright, filled with the sounds of dozens of languages being spoken by traders from across the galaxy. Music drifted from the entertainment districts, and the smell of exotic foods came from restaurants that served creatures Hyunwoo had never even heard of. But something was wrong. Hyunwoo noticed it first in the smaller trading posts. Many of the booths that should have been busy with customers stood empty. Their owners sat behind their counters with worried expressions, watching as potential buyers walked past without stopping. The bigger stores, however, were packed with shoppers. Sir, have you noticed the pattern? Ji-hai asked as they walked through the main trading district on level 8. She carried a data pad where she had been taking notes about the local business practices. I have, Hyunwoo replied, pausing to look at a small booth selling rare crystals from the outer rim. The elderly Altarian woman behind the counter looked tired and sad. Her forearms hung limp at her sides, and her usual blue skin had faded to a pale gray color that meant depression in her species. They continued walking until they reached the central plaza of the trading district. Here, a massive store dominated one entire side of the square. Its sign read, Velkari Premium Goods in letters that flashed different colors. Lines of customers waited outside, even though similar items could be found in the smaller shops for much better prices. "Excuse me," Hyunwoo said to a young human man who was walking away from one of the empty smaller booths. The man looked frustrated and was carrying a small bag that seemed far too light for someone who had just been shopping. The young man turned around. He was about Jihai's age, with short black hair and kind eyes that reminded Hyunwoo of his own son back on Earth. "Are you talking to me?" he asked. "Yes, I am Hyunwoo Park, Earth's trade ambassador. This is my assistant Jihai Kim. I could not help but notice you looked upset." "Oh, Ambassador Park, I heard you had arrived." The young man bowed politely. "My name is Dongmin Lee. I represent a small trading company from the Earth colonies, near Proxima Centauri. What seems to be troubling you, Dongmin?" Jihai asked, her voice gentle and encouraging. Dongmin looked around nervously, then gestured for them to follow him to a quieter area near one of the large windows that looked out into space. When they were away from the crowds, he began to speak in a low voice. "It is the Velkari Consortium," he said. "They are taking over everything. 6 months ago, when I first came to Harmony 7, there were dozens of independent traders selling rare metals from the asteroid fields. Now there are only 3 of us left, and we can barely make enough money to pay for our docking fees." Hyunwoo frowned. "How are they driving you out of business? Are they offering better prices?" "No, that is the strange thing," Dongmin explained. "Their prices are higher than ours, much higher. But somehow they always get the customers." "That does not make sense," Jihai said. "Why would people pay more for the same products?" Dongmin glanced around again, making sure no one was listening. "They have found ways to work around the station's rules. Nothing they do is technically illegal, but it makes it impossible for smaller traders to compete." "What kind of things?" Hyunwoo asked. "Well, for example, they have exclusive contracts with the major shipping companies. If you want to get your goods delivered to certain sectors of the galaxy, you have to use their transport services, but they will only carry products that were bought from Velkari stores." Jihai made a note on her datapad. "That sounds like a monopoly practice." "It gets worse," Dongmin continued. "They also control most of the advertising space on the station's information networks. Small traders like me cannot afford to buy ads, so customers never hear about our products. And they have their own people working in the station's trade information office. Somehow potential customers always get directed to Velkari stores first." Hyunwoo felt a familiar feeling in his chest. It was the same feeling he got when he saw bullies picking on smaller children back in school. The neural dampening field prevented him from feeling truly angry, but it could not stop him from feeling a strong desire to help. "Have you complained to Administrator Veltar?" he asked. Dongmin laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "I have tried. So have many others. But everything the Velkari do is technically within the rules. The administrator says that as long as no violence is involved, business competition is a natural part of free trade." "What about the other small traders? Have you tried working together?" "We have talked about it, but we are all from different species with different business practices. The Altarians prefer to work alone. The Centauri only trust their own family groups, and the humans are scattered across dozens of small companies. The Velkari, on the other hand, work as one big organization." Jihai looked up from her notes. "Who runs the Velkari Consortium?" "A being named Zethric," Dongmin replied. "He is their senior trade coordinator here on the station. I have never met him personally, but I have heard he is very smart and completely ruthless. He has been expanding Velkari operations throughout this sector for the past 2 years." Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the stars through the window. Finally, he turned back to Dongmin. "What would happen if someone found a way to level the playing field?" "I do not understand what you mean," Dongmin said. "Well, the Velkari are using the station's peaceful nature to their advantage. They know that smaller traders cannot fight back using traditional methods. But what if there was a different way to compete? Something that did not involve violence but still made things fair? Dongmin's eyes brightened slightly. Do you think that is possible, young man? Hyunwoo said, putting a friendly hand on Dongmin's shoulder. Humans have been finding creative solutions to impossible problems for thousands of years. It is one of the things we do best. What did you have in mind? Ji-hai asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. I think it is time I met some of these other traders, Hyunwoo said, and perhaps I should introduce myself to this Zethric character as well. After all, it is only polite for the new ambassador to meet the station's most successful business person. Dongmin looked confused. But sir, what can you do that the rest of us have not already tried? Hyunwoo smiled, and Ji-hai recognized that particular expression. It was the same smile he had worn when he convinced the Martian Trade Council to accept Earth's new agricultural products and when he negotiated the mining rights deal with the asteroid belt colonies. Dongmin, my young friend, have you ever heard the Earth saying about fighting fire with fire? No, sir, I have not. Well, sometimes when someone is using a particular strategy against you, the best response is to use a similar strategy, but in a way they do not expect. Hyunwoo paused, looking thoughtful. The Velkari are using the station's rules to their advantage. They are being very clever about it. So perhaps it is time for someone else to be clever as well. I still do not understand, Dongmin said. Do not worry about understanding it yet, Hyunwoo replied. Just trust me when I say that bullies are the same everywhere in the galaxy. They count on their victims being too polite or too scared to fight back. But there are many ways to fight back that have nothing to do with violence. Ji-hai closed her data pad and smiled at Dongmin. You should arrange a meeting with the other small traders. Tell them that Ambassador Park would like to speak with them about new opportunities for cooperation. And, Hyunwoo added, please find out when and where I might have a chance to meet Zethric in a public setting. I am very interested in learning about his business methods firsthand. As they walked back toward the diplomatic quarters, Dongmin, following behind them with a spring in his step that had not been there before, Ji-hai leaned close to Hyunwoo. Sir, what exactly are you planning? Nothing violent, I assure you, Hyunwoo replied. After all, violence is impossible on this station, but conversation, on the other hand, is not only allowed but encouraged. And humans, as I am sure you know, are very good at conversation. Ji-hai grinned. She was beginning to understand what her boss had in mind, and she had to admit it was going to be very interesting to watch. The central trade hall of Harmony 7 was buzzing with activity. More than 200 beings from dozens of species had gathered for the weekly Open Commerce Forum, where any trader could present new business proposals or discuss market concerns. It was exactly the kind of public setting Hyunwoo had been hoping for. He sat in the third row, wearing his best diplomatic jacket and maintaining the pleasant expression he had perfected over years of difficult negotiations. Ji-hai sat beside him, her datapad ready to record anything interesting that might happen. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all classifications, announced the forum moderator, a floating jellyfish-like creature with a voice like singing crystals. We now call upon Senior Trade Coordinator Zethric of the Velkari Consortium to present his latest market expansion proposal. A tall figure rose from the front row and walked to the central speaking platform. Zethric was impressive even by galactic standards. His species, the Velkari, looked somewhat like humans but were much taller and thinner, with pale green skin and large black eyes that seemed to see everything. He wore expensive robes that shifted color as he moved, and his voice carried easily through the hall without need for amplification. Thank you, Moderator Kailash, Zethric began, his tone smooth and confident. Fellow traders, I come before you today with an opportunity that will benefit everyone on Harmony 7. Hyunwoo leaned forward slightly, interested to hear what this would sound like. The Velkari Consortium is pleased to announce our new integrated supply management system. Zethric continued. We have negotiated exclusive partnerships with the 3 largest shipping companies in this sector. From next month, all trade goods moving through Harmony 7 will be processed through our central distribution network. A murmur went through the audience. Some voices sounded excited, but others seemed worried. This means faster delivery times, lower shipping costs, and better quality control for everyone, Zethric explained. Of course, to ensure the highest standards, all products will need to be certified through our quality assurance program before they can be shipped. Dongmin, who was sitting several rows behind Hyunwoo, made a small sound of distress. This was exactly the kind of thing he had been talking about. The Velkari were making it even harder for independent traders to compete. Now, said moderator Kailesh, we will open the floor for questions and comments. Several beings raised various appendages to speak. Most of the questions were technical details about shipping schedules and certification requirements. The Velkari had clearly thought through every aspect of their plan, and Zethric answered each question smoothly. Then Hyunwoo raised his hand. Yes, the being in the third row, moderator Kailesh announced. Hyunwoo stood up slowly, making sure everyone in the hall could see him. Thank you, moderator. I am Hyunwoo Park, Trade Ambassador from Earth. I have a comment rather than a question, if that is acceptable. Of course, Ambassador Park. Please proceed. Hyunwoo smiled warmly and began to clap his hands together slowly and deliberately. The sound echoed through the quiet hall. I must say, Coordinator Zethric, this is truly an impressive presentation. The level of planning that must have gone into this proposal is remarkable. Zethric bowed his head slightly, accepting what seemed to be a compliment. I mean, Hyunwoo continued, still clapping, the way you have managed to gain control over the shipping companies, the certification process, and the distribution network all at the same time shows real dedication to your craft. It is almost like watching a master class in business strategy. Thank you, Ambassador, Zethric replied, though he seemed slightly puzzled by the human's tone. Oh no, thank you, Hyunwoo said, finally stopping his applause. It is not often that we get to see such a clear example of how to dominate a market without actually having to compete on things like price or quality. I imagine the smaller traders in the audience are learning so much from this presentation. Jihaye had to press her lips together to keep from smiling. Around the hall, she could see other beings starting to look confused. Hyunwoo's words sounded like praise, but something about the way he was saying them made them feel different. I particularly admire how you have found a way to make everyone go through your systems, Hyunwoo continued. It reminds me of some historical examples from Earth. There was once a group that controlled all the bridges in a city, so anyone who wanted to cross the river had to pay their fees. Of course, they called it a service to the community as well. Several beings in the audience made small sounds of understanding. The comparison was becoming clear. Ambassador Park, Zethric said, his voice losing some of its smoothness. I assure you that our integrated system is designed to benefit all traders equally. Oh, I am sure it is, Hyunwoo replied, nodding enthusiastically. After all, when there is only one system available, everyone gets to use the same system. That is very equal indeed, and the fact that you control that system is just a happy coincidence, I suppose. Now there was definite murmuring from the audience. Some beings were starting to laugh, though others looked confused by the strange tone of the conversation. Our certification process ensures quality standards, Zethric said, beginning to sound defensive. Absolutely, Hyunwoo agreed. And I am sure the fact that products from Velkari stores will not need to go through the same lengthy certification process as products from independent traders is just because your quality is already so well established. How convenient for everyone. The murmuring grew louder. Even beings whose translation systems were struggling with the concept of sarcasm were beginning to understand that something unusual was happening.Zethric's large black eyes narrowed. Ambassador, are you suggesting that there is something improper about our business practices? Improper? Oh goodness, no, Hyunwoo said, placing a hand over his heart as if shocked by the suggestion. Everything you have described sounds perfectly legal according to the station's rules. I would never suggest otherwise. I am simply expressing my admiration for how creatively you have interpreted those rules. Creative interpretation, Zethric repeated slowly. Yes, exactly. It takes real imagination to find ways to eliminate your competition without actually breaking any written laws. I mean, anyone can compete by offering better products or lower prices. But finding ways to make it impossible for others to compete at all? That takes special talent. By now, the entire hall was listening intently. Many of the smaller traders were starting to sit up straighter, and some were even beginning to smile. They were finally hearing someone say what they had all been thinking. Moderator Kailash floated nervously above the speaking platform. Perhaps we should move on to the next item on the agenda. Oh, but I am not finished expressing my appreciation, Hyunwoo said politely. Coordinator Zethric has put so much effort into this presentation. It would be rude not to give it the attention it deserves. Zethric was now visibly uncomfortable. His skin had shifted to a darker shade of green, which in his species indicated either anger or embarrassment. I believe I have explained our system adequately. You certainly have, Hyunwoo agreed. In fact, you have explained it so well that I think everyone in this room now understands exactly what kind of opportunity you are offering them. The opportunity to do business entirely on your terms, using your systems and paying your fees. How could anyone not be excited about such generous terms? Several beings in the audience were now laughing openly. Others were whispering to their neighbors, explaining what the human was really saying to those whose translation systems were not keeping up. I think, said a voice from the back of the hall, that the human is making a joke about the Velkari proposal. Not a joke, Hyunwoo called back, turning to address the entire audience. I am being completely sincere in my admiration. After all, when you cannot win through fair competition, finding ways to eliminate the competition entirely is certainly one approach to business success. The hall erupted in sounds that, while different for each species, all seemed to indicate amusement. Even some of the Velkari's usual supporters were making noises that suggested they were reconsidering their position. Zethric stood frozen at the speaking platform, clearly unsure how to respond. Everything the human had said was technically complimentary, but the effect was exactly the opposite of what a compliment should achieve. Well, Moderator Kailash announced, floating higher to get everyone's attention. That was certainly an interesting discussion. Perhaps we should take a short break before moving on to the next presentation. As beings began to stand up and move, around the hall talking excitedly among themselves, Zethric quickly gathered his materials and left the speaking platform. But Hyunwoo could see that the damage was already done. The smaller traders were clustering together, talking and pointing at diagrams they were drawing on their datapads. For the first time in months, they looked like they had hope. Jihai leaned over to whisper to her boss. Sir, I think your translation was received loud and clear. Translation? Hyunwoo asked innocently. I was simply offering my genuine appreciation for an innovative business strategy, though I suppose it is possible that some beings might have interpreted my comments differently. I think, Jihai said, grinning widely, that you just started something very interesting. Looking. 2 weeks had passed since the incident at the Open Commerce Forum, and Harmony 7 felt like a different place. Hyunwoo noticed it first in the small things. Traders who had barely made eye contact before were now gathering in groups, talking, and laughing together. The empty booths in the trading district were busy again, and there were fewer lines outside the Velkari premium goods store, but the most interesting change was in the way people spoke to each other. Ambassador Park, called a familiar voice as Hyunwoo and Jihai walked through the main plaza on level 12. They turned to see Dongmin Lee approaching with a wide smile on his face. Hello, Dongmin. You look much happier than when we first met, Hyunwoo observed. I am, sir. Business has been much better lately. But that is not why I wanted to talk to you. Dongmin paused, looking slightly embarrassed. I wanted to thank you for teaching me something very important. What did I teach you? Hyunwoo asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Well, yesterday I had a customer who was complaining about my prices. He said he could get the same rare metals from the Velkari store for only twice as much money. So I told him how impressed I was by his excellent mathematics skills and his obvious talent for finding the best deals in the galaxy. Jihai covered her mouth with her hand to hide her grin. And what happened? Hyunwoo asked. He bought 3 times as much as he had originally planned, Dongmin said proudly. Then he brought two of his friends back an hour later. I think he finally understood what I was really saying about the Velkari prices. That is wonderful, Dongmin. I am glad things are working out for you. It is not just me, sir. All the independent traders are learning this new way of talking. Some of us are even teaching it to traders from other species. Dongmin gestured toward a nearby cafe where they could see an unusual gathering taking place. At one of the larger tables, a group of beings from at least 6 different species were sitting together, apparently having some kind of lesson. An elderly Altarian woman with 4 arms was speaking, while the others listened carefully. Occasionally, one of them would try to copy what she had said, and the whole group would burst into the sounds that each of their species made when amused. What are they doing? Jihai asked. Learning sarcasm, Dongmin explained. The Altarians are very good at it, once they understand the concept. Their language has 17 different ways to say the same thing, depending on what you really mean. And the Centauri have discovered that they can make their musical voices sound especially effective when they are being sarcastic. Hyunwoo and Jihai exchanged glances. This was more than they had hoped for. Has anyone complained about this new educational activity? Hyunwoo asked carefully. Oh yes, Dongmin said, his eyes twinkling with mischief. Zethric filed a formal complaint with Administrator Veltar 3 days ago. He said the station was becoming a hostile work environment because of psychological warfare. And what did Administrator Veltar say? That is the best part. Dongmin grinned. The administrator told Zethric that they were impressed by his dedication to maintaining a positive workplace atmosphere, and they were sure that such an experienced businessman would have no trouble adapting to changing social conditions. Jihai stared at Dongmin. Administrator Veltar said that? Word for word. I was there when it happened. Zethric looked like he wanted to argue. But how do you argue when someone is agreeing with you and complimenting you at the same time? Hyunwoo felt a warm glow of satisfaction. If Administrator Veltar was picking up on sarcasm naturally, then it was spreading even faster than he had hoped. We should go say hello to the study group, he suggested, leading them toward the cafe. As they approached the table, the elderly Altarian woman looked up. Her name was Su Jin, and she had been running a small jewelry booth for more than 20 years. Ambassador Park, how wonderful to see you. We were just discussing the proper use of emphasis in cross-species sarcasm. Please do not let us interrupt. Your lesson, Hyunwoo said, pulling up chairs for himself and Jihai. Actually, said one of the Centauri whose musical voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, we were hoping you might help us with a practical application. We have been having some trouble with a particular business situation. What kind of situation? Jihai asked. A being made of what appeared to be living energy, who had introduced herself as Boram in honor of human culture, flickered brighter as she spoke. The Velkari have cornered the antimatter fuel market. They have convinced the station management that their fuel is safer than what we independent dealers provide. So now all fuel sales have to go through their safety certification program. How long does this certification take? Hyunwoo asked. 6 weeks. Boram replied, her energy form shifting to a darker color that indicated frustration in her species. But Velkari fuel gets certified immediately because it is already pre-approved. That does sound like an interesting business model, Hyunwoo said thoughtfully. What are you planning to do about it? Sujin leaned forward with all 4 of her arms on the table. We want to try your method, but we are not sure we are doing it correctly. Could you listen to what we have planned and tell us if it sounds right? Of course. Well, Boram began, her energy form flickering with what might have been nervousness. We thought we would attend the next fuel safety meeting and congratulate Zethric on his innovative approach to customer service. Go on, Hyunwoo encouraged. We want to tell him how impressed we are that he has found a way to make fuel safety so much more important than things like price or availability. Boram continued, gaining confidence. And we want to thank him for making it so much easier for customers to choose their fuel supplier, since there is really only one choice available. One of the Centauri added their musical voice to the conversation. And we want to express our admiration for how he has managed to make fuel safety entirely dependent on his approval, rather than on boring technical standards that anyone can understand. Hyunwoo nodded approvingly. That sounds like you understand the concept very well. But will it work? Asked a small furry being whose species Jihai did not recognize. What if Zethric just ignores what we are saying? That is the beauty of this approach, Hyunwoo explained. Zethric cannot really complain about what you are saying because technically, you are complimenting his business practices. But everyone else who hears you will understand exactly what you mean. And, added Jihai, the more he tries to defend his practices, the more obvious it becomes that there is something wrong with them. Sujin made a sound that was laughter in her species. So we make him explain his own unfair system to everyone? Exactly. The best part is that he will do most of the work for you. People who might not have noticed the problem before will start paying attention when they hear him trying to justify it. This is much more fun than I expected, Boram said, her energy form brightening to a cheerful golden color. No wonder humans are so good at negotiations. We have had a lot of practice, Hyunwoo admitted, but I am impressed by how quickly all of you have learned. Some of you are already better at this than many humans I know. The study group spent another hour practicing different scenarios and discussing the finer points of timing and emphasis. By the time Hyunwoo and Jihai left the cafe, the group was planning to hold similar lessons for other species around the station. Sir, Jihai said, as they walked back toward the diplomatic quarters, I think this is getting bigger than we expected. Is that a problem? I am not sure. What if Administrator Veltar realizes what is happening and tries to stop it? Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Then he smiled. Jihye, do you remember what Veltar said when Zethric complained about the hostile work environment? They used sarcasm in their response. Exactly. I think Administrator Veltar understands perfectly well what is happening. The question is not whether they will try to stop it, but whether they approve of it. And do you think they approve? Well, let me put it this way, Hyunwoo said, his eyes twinkling with the same mischief that Dongmin had shown earlier. Harmony 7 was built to promote peaceful resolution of conflicts. What could be more peaceful than resolving disputes through polite conversation? Jihai grinned. Even if that polite conversation happens to point out exactly why one side of the dispute is being unreasonable? Especially then, Hyunwoo replied. After all, the truth has a way of making itself clear, even when people are being very polite about sharing it. As they reached their quarters, they could hear the sound of laughter echoing from various parts of the station. It seemed that the galaxy was discovering that humor, properly applied, could be just as effective as any weapon ever invented. And unlike weapons, laughter was something that everyone could share. The formal hearing room in the administrative section of Harmony 7 was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread throughout the station that Zethric had filed an official complaint against Ambassador Hyunwoo Park, and beings from dozens of species had come to witness what promised to be an interesting proceeding. Administrator Veltar floated at the front of the room behind a curved desk that looked like it was made from crystallized starlight. Their body was flickering with colors that suggested they were either very interested or very amused by the situation. It was sometimes hard to tell with crystal beings. Zethric sat at a table on the left side of the room, surrounded by 3 other Velkari who were presumably his legal advisors. His pale green skin had darkened to an unhealthy shade, and his large black eyes kept darting nervously around the crowded room. Hyunwoo sat calmly at the table on the right, with Jihai beside him taking notes. He wore his most formal diplomatic jacket and had the peaceful expression of someone who had absolutely nothing to worry about. This hearing, Administrator Veltar began, their voice carrying easily through the room, has been called to address a complaint filed by Senior Trade Coordinator Zethric of the Velkari Consortium. The complaint alleges that Ambassador Hyunwoo Park of Earth has been engaging in what the complaint describes as psychological warfare against Velkari business interests. A murmur of excitement went through the audience. In the 3 weeks since the Open Commerce Forum incident, stories of the human's strange new way of talking had spread throughout the station. Many beings had never heard of sarcasm before, but they were learning quickly. Coordinator Zethric, Veltar continued, Please state your complaint for the record. Zethric stood up slowly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention from the packed gallery. Administrator Veltar, honored beings of the tribunal, I come before you today to report a serious threat to the peaceful nature of our station. Please continue, Veltar said, though there was something in their tone that made Jihai suspect the administrator was enjoying this more than they were letting on. 3 weeks ago, at the Open Commerce Forum, Ambassador Park launched what can only be described as a verbal attack on the Velkari Consortium's legitimate business practices. Since that time, this attack has spread throughout the station like a virus, infecting other traders with hostile attitudes. Several beings in the audience made small sounds of amusement atZethric's choice of words. The humans have introduced a form of communication that appears peaceful on the surface but is designed to cause psychological harm and business disruption. Zethric continued, his voice rising slightly. They have taught other species to use this weapon against honest merchants trying to make a living. I see, Administrator Veltar said. And what specific actions do you believe warrant official intervention? Ambassador Park and his associates have been making statements that sound like compliments but are actually insults. They have been encouraging others to do the same. This has created a hostile work environment where legitimate business practices are being mocked and undermined. Zethric gestured toward the audience, where many familiar faces were watching the proceedings with obvious interest. Look around this room, Administrator. Half of these beings are here because they want to see the Velkari humiliated further. This is not the peaceful trading environment that Harmony 7 was meant to provide. Thank you, Coordinator Zethric, Veltar replied. Ambassador Park, how do you respond to these allegations? Hyunwoo stood up slowly, still maintaining his calm expression. Administrator Veltar, I must say I am deeply moved by CoordinatorZethric's passionate defense of peaceful communication. His dedication to protecting the station's harmonious atmosphere is truly inspiring. A ripple of barely controlled laughter went through the audience. Even some of Zethric's own advisors looked like they were struggling not to smile. I had no idea, Hyunwoo continued, that expressing genuine admiration for innovative business strategies could be considered a form of warfare. Perhaps my species is just naturally gifted at appreciating the creative ways that successful businesses find to eliminate their competition. Zethric's skin shifted to an even darker shade of green. You see? This is exactly what I am talking about. He makes it sound like a compliment, but everyone knows he is really criticizing our business model. I am sorry, Coordinator Zethric, Hyunwoo said, placing his hand over his heart with an expression of sincere concern. I certainly did not mean to sound critical. I was simply expressing my honest appreciation for how thoroughly you have thought through your market strategy. Not everyone would have the vision to gain control over shipping, certification, and distribution all at the same time. Administrator Veltar leaned forward, and the lights in their crystalline body began flickering faster. Ambassador Park, are you saying that you genuinely admire the Velkari business practices? Absolutely, Hyunwoo replied without hesitation. It takes real imagination to find ways to make competition impossible without technically breaking any rules. I mean, anyone can try to win customers by offering better products or lower prices. But finding ways to make it so customers have no real choice? That shows true innovation. By now, half the audience was making the sounds that indicated laughter, in their respective species. The other half were whispering translations to those whose language systems were still catching up. Zethric stood up abruptly. Administrator, you can hear what he is doing. He is making our business practices sound dishonest. But Coordinator, Veltar said, and Jihai was almost certain she heard amusement in the administrator's crystalline voice. Ambassador Park just said he admires your practices. How can admiration be considered an attack? Because he does not really mean it, Zethric protested. He is using this human thing called sarcasm to make us look bad. Sarcasm? Veltar repeated as if they had never heard the word before. Could you explain this concept to the tribunal? Zethric looked around desperately at his advisors, but they seemed just as confused as he was about how to explain the problem. It is when someone says one thing, but means something completely different. They use a tone of voice that makes the real meaning clear to everyone except the translation systems. I see, Veltar said slowly. So you are saying that Ambassador Park has been expressing opinions that sound positive but are actually negative? Yes, exactly. And this has caused problems for your business? Yes. Other traders are starting to question our methods. Customers are asking uncomfortable questions about our pricing and policies. It is disrupting our entire operation. Administrator Veltar was quiet for a long moment, the lights in their body shifting through several different colors. Finally, they spoke again. Coordinator Zethric, let me make sure I understand your complaint correctly. You are asking this tribunal to take action against Ambassador Park because he has been publicly expressing his opinions about your business practices in a way that encourages others to think critically about those practices? Well, when you put it that way, Zethric began, then stopped as he realized how his complaint sounded. And you believe that this constitutes psychological warfare because it makes people less likely to accept your business model without question? Zethric looked around the room, seeing for the first time how his words were being received by the audience. Many beings were now staring at him with expressions that suggested they were finally understanding what the humans had been trying to tell them. Furthermore, Veltar continued, you are suggesting that we should prohibit forms of communication that encourage critical thinking, because such communication makes it harder for businesses to operate without scrutiny. The room had gone completely silent. Even the usual background hum of the station's life support system seemed quieter than normal. Administrator, Zethric said desperately, surely you can see that this human trickery is destroying the peaceful nature of our station? On the contrary, Veltar replied, and now there was definitely amusement in their voice. I would say that encouraging peaceful discussion of business practices is exactly what this station was designed to promote. After all, how can we have truly fair trade if people are not free to express their opinions about different trading methods? But they are not just expressing opinions, Zethric protested. They are making jokes about us. Are jokes prohibited? On Harmony 7? Veltar asked innocently. No, but is there a regulation against expressing admiration for business strategies, even if that admiration is expressed in an unusual way? No, Administrator, but is there any rule that prevents traders from asking questions about pricing policies or certification requirements? Zethric deflated visibly. No, there is not. Then I am afraid I do not see what action this tribunal could take even if we wanted to. Veltar paused, letting their words sink in. Unless, of course, you would like us to pass a regulation requiring all beings on the station to express only sincere admiration for Velkari business practices. The suggestion was so absurd that even some of Zethric's advisors made sounds of amusement. I think, said a voice from the audience, that would be the end of free trade as we know it. Veltar's lights flickered brighter. Indeed it would. And, since Harmony 7 exists to promote free and fair trade among all species, 6 months had passed since the hearing that officially made sarcasm a recognized form of diplomatic communication on Harmony 7. The station had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted, and Hyun-woo was amazed by how quickly the changes had taken hold. He stood on the observation deck of level 25, looking out at the busy docking bays where ships from hundreds of worlds came and went every day. The view was the same as it had been when he first arrived, but everything else was different. Sir, the morning reports, Ji-hai said, approaching with her ever-present data pad. She had been promoted to Senior Cultural Exchange Coordinator, a position that had been created specifically to handle the growing interest in human communication methods. What do they say today? Hyun-woo asked, though he could already guess from the smile on her face. Independent trader revenues are up 47% from last month. The Velkari Consortium still operates on the station, but their market share has dropped to just 12% of total trade volume. And most interesting of all, customer satisfaction ratings for the station as a whole have reached an all-time high. Hyun-woo nodded, pleased but not surprised. What about our educational programs? The Interspecies Institute for Advanced Verbal Irony has a waiting list of over 3,000 students from 218 different worlds. We have had to expand to 4 additional locations just to handle the demand. The institute had been Ji-Hai's idea, though she always insisted that Hyunwoo deserved the credit. What had started as informal lessons in the cafe had grown into a full educational program that attracted beings from across the galaxy who wanted to learn what they were calling the human art of peaceful combat. "And what about our friend, Zethric?" Hyunwoo asked. Ji-Hee grinned. "That might be the most interesting development of all. Have you seen his latest performance?" "Performance? Come on, sir. You have to see this for yourself." She led him down to level 15, where a crowd had gathered around what used to be the central Velkari store. The space had been converted into something completely unexpected. A small theater with a stage where a tall, thin figure with pale green skin was standing in front of an audience of delighted beings from dozens of species. "So there I was," Zethric was saying, his voice carrying easily through the space, trying to explain to Administrator Veltar why expressing admiration should be considered a form of warfare. "Do you know what I said? I said that jokes were destroying the peaceful nature of the station." Jokes. As if peace and laughter could not exist in the same place. The audience erupted in the various sounds that different species made when they found something funny. Zethric waited for the laughter to die down before continuing. "The best part was when I demanded that the tribunal pass a law requiring everyone to express only sincere admiration for Velkari business practices. I still wake up at night wondering how I thought that was a reasonable request." More laughter filled the theater. Hyunwoo had to admit that Zethric had become quite skilled at making fun of his own past behavior. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings of all classifications," Zethric continued, "I have learned that the universe has a sense of humor, and sometimes the joke is on you. The humans taught me that when you cannot laugh at yourself, you become the kind of person that everyone else laughs at instead." As the show continued, Hyunwoo and Ji-Hee made their way to a quiet corner where they could watch without disturbing the audience. "How did this happen?" Hyunwoo asked. "Apparently, after the hearing, Zethric spent several weeks trying to figure out how to fight back against sarcasm," Ji-Hye explained. "But every time he tried to argue with someone who was being sarcastic, he just made himself look worse. Finally, he realized that the only winning move was to join in, and now he is a comedian? The most popular comedian on the station. Turns out that someone who has made as many business mistakes as Zethric has a lot of material to work with. And beings love hearing someone make fun of the kind of behavior they used to be afraid to criticize." On stage, Zethric was now telling a story about the time he tried to charge fees for breathing the station's air because it had been processed through Velkari filtration systems. The audience was laughing so hard that some of them were having trouble staying upright. "What about the other Velkari businesses?" Hyunwoo asked. "Most of them have adapted surprisingly well. They discovered that when you compete on actual quality and service instead of trying to eliminate competition, you can still be quite successful. Some of them are doing better now than they were before." "And Administrator Veltar has become something of a sarcasm expert themselves. Yesterday they told a group of visiting dignitaries from the Galactic Council that they were impressed by how the Council had managed to make bureaucracy an art form. The dignitaries spent 3 hours trying to figure out whether they had been complimented or insulted," Hyunwoo chuckled. "I would love to have seen that." A familiar voice called out from behind them. "Ambassador Park, Ms. Kim." They turned to see Dongmin Lee approaching with his usual cheerful expression. He was wearing a jacket that identified him as a representative of the Independent Traders Cooperative, an organization that had formed in the weeks following the hearing. "Dongmin, how are things with the cooperative?" Hyunwoo asked. "Better than we ever imagined. We now have over 400 members from 83 different species. We have our own shipping contracts, our own quality certification program, and our own customer service department. And the best part is that we treat all our members fairly." "That sounds like exactly what the station needed," Ji-Hye said. "It is, but that is not why I wanted to find you. I have news that I think you will find interesting." Dongmin paused dramatically. "The Galactic Council has asked if you would be willing to visit other trading stations throughout the galaxy To teach them about what happened here on Harmony 7. Hyunwoo raised an eyebrow. They want me to spread sarcasm to other stations? They want you to spread fairness, Dongmin corrected. Apparently, word has gotten out about how peaceful communication methods can be used to promote honest business practices. There are dozens of stations dealing with the same kinds of problems that we had with the Velkari. And they think sarcasm is the solution? They think that teaching people to express their opinions clearly and effectively is the solution. Sarcasm just happens to be a very good tool for doing that. Hyunwoo looked out at the theater where Zethric was now teaching the audience how to recognize when someone was trying to cheat them by using overly complicated explanations of simple policies. The former monopolist had become one of the station's most effective teachers of fair business practices. "What do you think, Ji-hai?" he asked. "Are you ready to take our show on the road?" "Sir," she replied with a grin that would have made any of their sarcasm students proud. "I can hardly wait to meet the next group of traders who think they have found a way to eliminate fair competition. I am sure they will be thrilled to receive our genuine admiration for their innovative approaches to business." "Well then," Hyunwoo said, "I suppose we should pack our bags. After all, it would be selfish to keep all this peaceful communication expertise to ourselves." As they walked back toward the diplomatic quarters to begin planning their next adventure, they could hear the sound of laughter echoing through the corridors of Harmony 7. It was a sound that had become as common as the hum of the life support systems, and just as essential to the station's operation. Behind them, Zethric was finishing his show with a lesson about the importance of being able to laugh at your own mistakes. "Remember," he told his audience, "the universe is full of beings who take themselves too seriously. Do not be one of them. It is much more fun to be the person who can find humor in any situation, especially when that situation involves your own past foolishness." The audience applauded enthusiastically and Zethric bowed deeply. As he straightened up, he caught sight of Hyunwoo and Ji-hai leaving the theater. For a moment, their eyes met across the crowd. Zethric raised one hand, in a gesture that looked like a salute, but might have been a wave goodbye. Hyunwoo returned the gesture with a smile that held no mockery, only genuine respect for someone who had learned to turn their greatest failure into their greatest strength. And in that moment, as the sounds of laughter and friendly conversation filled the air around them, Harmony 7 lived up to its name in ways its builders had never imagined. Sometimes the best way to create peace was not to eliminate conflict, but to teach people how to fight with words that brought understanding instead of anger. After all, humans had always known that the pen was mightier than the sword. They had just never imagined that politeness could be mightier than both.